A millionaire walks into a garage. What she discovered about her ex-husband will shock you. Julia Hartman's heart raced with the dust of the past as she unlocked the garage door, steeling herself against the emotions threatening to spill over. She was a millionaire, a tech entrepreneur known for innovation. Yet here, in the shadows of her late ex-husband Tom's forgotten world, anxiety twisted her insides. Lifting the top box, overflowing with memories and cobwebs, she half expected to confront the ghosts of their life together. But what she found dug deeper. A journal, hidden and neglected, buried beneath the clutter. It beckoned her, whispering secrets of a man long thought to be simply comfortable in his mediocrity. As she flipped through the pages, filled with looping script, vibrant sketches, and passionate dreams, Julia felt the weight of Tom's unfulfilled aspirations shift the ground beneath her feet. He wanted an art gallery, a sanctuary for creativity that had never been realized, an ambition choked by the practical constraints of their lives. How had she dismissed his dreams as mere fantasies? Regret hung heavily in the atmosphere, knowing their life was peppered with what-ifs. She had pursued her tech dreams obsessively, but in that pursuit, had she ignored the man she once loved? Before she could unravel the thought, the shadow of doubt started creeping in. What did it mean to her now? A successful businesswoman living in a picturesque home, comfortable, pristine, and soulless. The stark contrast of her polished life against Tom's abandoned passion brought forth a gnawing sense of unease. Memories flickered, and with each discovery, she realized how deeply intertwined their lives had been. Confessions of inadequacies spilled out in ink, highlighting his silent frustrations, the resentment of a life dictated by societal norms. Did she contribute to crushing his spirit? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she traced the lines of Tom's ambition on the pages, her fingers brushed against a small envelope. Her breath quickened. Tucked inside was a set of documents, a hidden trust fund dedicated to supporting local artists. The purpose: uplift voices that neither of them had valued enough to nurture. Time stood still as the implications spiraled. Was this his chance to reclaim what had been snatched away? To dare to dream where they once walked together but failed to fight for parallel futures? Terror gripped her as she envisioned the whispered judgments from her peers if she chose to honor a legacy intertwined with her own success. Would her friends scoff at the idea that her wealth carried the burden of Tom's unrealized potential? Julia felt her world teeter on an axis of stability and chaos. Could she embrace this unknown, stepping into a realm that might unravel the very fabric of her accomplished life? Standing there, surrounded by echoes of faded dreams and potential, Julia understood she was at a crossroads, not just for her identity, but for a community that had witnessed her rise. The ink from Tom's pen urged her into action, though each letter pulsed with fear. What would she give up? What if pursuing this trust fund crumbled the foundation of her achievements, leaving her standing in the debris of privilege? As she prepared to uncover more art, more passion, her heart raced, questioning if she had the courage to confront the weight of past neglect. Did she dare to carve out space from her own success for Tom's overlooked dreams? Shivering with the possibility, Julia knew she was on the verge of a life-altering decision. Opening the next box could serve not just as an exploration of the man she once loved, but could redefine her entire existence. What lay ahead? Only time would tell. The tension pulsed in her veins, poised for the next revelation, and in that moment she realized she had only just begun. The silence in the garage wrapped around Julia like an anxious cloak, each breath heavy with anticipation. She could feel her pulse throbbing in tune with the rapid thoughts swirling in her mind. What if she chose to resurrect Tom's unfulfilled dreams, paving a path for the trust fund he had envisioned? The implications felt profound, a decision that could reshape not only her perception of herself, but also the narrative of her life. With the envelope still cradled in her hand, Julia stepped deeper into the shadows of the garage. There was clutter everywhere, remnants of a life shared, discarded hopes hidden among the debris. A rusted paintbrush caught her eye, the handle worn smooth, devoid of any memory of creativity. It was a stark reminder that while she had soared in professional height, someone else's dream had lay forgotten. Each box she pried open seemed to reveal more than just physical objects. They unveiled fractures in her understanding of success itself. She had succeeded, yes, but had she truly flourished? Had her relentless ambitions suffocated artistic flames? Not just Tom's, but perhaps her own latent creativity. Her fingers trembled slightly as they brushed against another journal, this one seemingly more fragmented than Tom's, filled with nervous sketches layered with the complexity of self-doubt. Putting her hand on it, she recalled the meetings filled with tech talk and the dismissive gestures whenever Tom would mention his art. Did she dismiss it out of fear? Was she scared his passion might eclipse her own achievements? The probing questions pierced her thoughts like daggers, each recalling moments where she could have chosen encouragement over skepticism. And then it struck her. The potential of that trust fund was tied to much more than honoring Tom's memory. It was a chance for her to redefine her own purpose. It felt audacious to contemplate, but what if she dedicated herself to supporting artists, showcasing their dreams? Could this be a method of translation? A way to reclaim the lost pieces of her own identity by letting others shine? The fear returned, mingling with a flicker of resolve. What if she leaned into this? What if she transformed the whispers of judgment from her peers into echoes of pride? A spark ignited in her. The prospect of venturing into uncharted territory was both terrifying and exhilarating. Yet the reality tugged at her. Embracing something outside the norms she had long upheld required monumental shifts in perspective. Releasing a deep breath, Julia considered how her venture could assist local artists, helping them realize their dreams where Tom had faltered. This was not about charity. It was about fostering a community built on creativity, a reimagining of success that included diversity of talent rather than echoing singular achievements. It dawned on her that as a millionaire entrenched in innovation, she could pivot her influence. She could work tirelessly to foster an environment where everyone's voice mattered. As she contemplated her next steps, Julia felt the weight of urgency press down upon her. The fear of failure sat at her doorstep, but alongside it bubbled an intrinsic drive that demanded action. A fierce determination to not only honor Tom's memory, but to create a living legacy for herself that went beyond material success. She would need a plan. To execute her vision, she had to seek guidance and build connections, reaching out to local artists, art communities, and perhaps even collaborators who shared her passion. It was a monumental undertaking, one that could dramatically shift her public persona, but also yield incredible personal reward. Julia was on the brink of understanding not just who she was, but who she could become, standing at the intersection of past burdens and future possibilities. Reluctantly, she recognized that growing involved risks, yet with that risk came potential authenticity. As she set her sights on her burgeoning ambitions, a sudden thought jolted her. Could rekindling Tom's dreams unleash a cascade of repercussions not just for her, but also for the artists who echoed his world? The notion sent a chill down her spine. Was she prepared to face whatever might come next? Filled with an electric sense of purpose, Julia took a step back, glancing at the trust fund documents one last time, as the thrill of the challenge propelled her forward. The adventure ahead promised to be profound, unearthing not just memories, but raw potential waiting to be revitalized. What lay waiting on the horizon? The call to action reverberated deeply as the quest to unveil the best version of herself began anew. The lingering weight of her decision pressed upon Julia as she stepped out of the garage, the cool air hitting her face like a refreshing slap. Adrenaline pulsed through her veins, igniting an urgency she hadn't felt in years. Each step away from the dust and relics of her past was a commitment to the future she envisioned, one filled with vibrant colors and the bold strokes of artists yet to be discovered. Julia navigated through the clutter of her own mind alongside the clutter of the garage. With apprehension, she considered the meticulous world in which she had once thrived, the corporation that admired her cutthroat tenacity, and the algorithmic successes that had become her life's measuring stick. But now, that life seemed unfulfilling, a series of numbers devoid of the breath of creativity. This realization was staggering, a contradiction to everything she had thought she wanted. To bring her vision to life, Julia needed direction. The decision to support local artists required more than just a shaking off of old habits. It needed a strategic plan. She felt the old mechanisms of her corporate brain spring into action. Julia returned to her office, pulling out her laptop. Data and analytics danced behind her eyelids, but instead of cold metrics, she sought stories and passions. Her fingers found the keyboard, typing rapidly as she outlined her mission. Create an online platform connecting artists with resources, she wrote. Fund mentorship programs to guide emerging talents. With every point, familiar threads of excitement wove through her thoughts, slowly reviving the flickering flame of creativity she had felt pressed down for so long. Each idea flourished, feeding her desire to enable others to build their dreams. Yet as the vision expanded, a knotted concern tangled within her. She would have to confront the very colleagues, the business elite, who had once praised her relentless ambition. What would confront them be like? Would they scoff at her new endeavor? In their eyes, it was a short leap from millionaire to dreamer, and Julia wondered if she had the courage to bear their judgment. Doubt permeated her confidence, coiling around her. What would they say? Would they see her as weak, as if she had surrendered her hard-earned status for an unmeasurable ideal? But deep inside, a voice persisted, much louder now than the first whispers of doubt. This was about authenticity, about rediscovering who she had always wanted to be, unshackled from the false narratives that bound her. The thought of reaching out to local artists sent shivers down her spine, both thrilling and intimidating. Then, amidst the whirlwind of emotions, a resolve began to form. Julia realized she would have to be vulnerable. It was fundamental to her journey. She needed to immerse herself in the communities she intended to uplift, to learn from the artists themselves. She decided to attend local art shows, take part in workshops, and build meaningful relationships, one conversation at a time. The urgency deepened within her. This call to action wasn't merely a professional shift. It was a personal exploration. To be of service, she would have to understand their struggles and triumphs. By anchoring herself within their world, Julia could expand her own narrative, lending resonance to her past fears, instead of allowing them to confine her. A sense of clarity surged through her as she penned notes on potential contacts and venues to explore. For the first time in years, she felt the intoxicating thrill of possibility push her out of confinement. The risks were profound, but she could no longer stand still. Julia was ready to embrace the chaos that came with uncertainty, a rebellion against the norms she had long accepted. As she closed her laptop, a sense of determination settled in her chest. Yet in the midst of her newfound clarity, a thought snaked its way into her mind. What would it take to not just advocate for these artists, but to truly help them navigate their own fears, much like she had just begun to do? The warmth of opportunity enveloped her, yet something nagged at her consciousness. Was she prepared for the emotional upheaval her journey would undoubtedly invite? The challenge was calling her forth, demanding more than just support. It was asking for a commitment to face herself head-on. Julia leaned back, staring at the bustling streets outside her office window, teeming with life and restless ambition. Deep within her, she held the blueprint of change, but the time had come for action. an unveiling of her capacity for connection, to rise from the shadows of the past. And as she stared into that vibrant world outside, a chilling realization settled over her. Embracing the narrative of others would also demand she confront her own shadows. What limits would she have to face? And more disturbingly, what truths would she unearth about her own ambitions in the process? The next chapter loomed, full of unanswered questions and potential awakenings. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across Julia's office. It felt like a metaphor. The shadows of her past lingered by her side, but the glow of her new intentions beckoned her forward. She took a deep breath, her heart stirring with trepidation and an unfamiliar excitement. This was her moment, and she couldn't let the weight of doubt overshadow her emerging vision. Stepping away from her desk, Julia decided to take her first leap into the world she aspired to impact. She pulled on a light jacket, its fabric comforting against the evening chill. As she made her way to a nearby art gallery showcasing local talent, she reflected on the sense of purpose now spiraling within her. Each step felt monumental, shedding remnants of where she used to be while drawing closer to where she longed to go. The gallery buzzed with chatter, laughter, and the clinking of glasses, an atmosphere unlike her previous corporate environments. The walls displayed a mosaic of vibrant canvases, each brushstroke teeming with untamed emotion. It was intoxicating. Julia stood awash in colors, paradoxically aware of her own faded palette. She scanned the room, her gaze landing on a young woman passionately discussing her work, gesturing wildly. Julia approached slowly, her mind racing with questions. Did the woman struggle with self-doubt as she did? Would her sincerity come across amidst the many voices filled with bravado? "Your art," Julia began, her voice shaky but determined. "It evokes so much emotion. What inspired you?" The artist turned, her face lighting up. "I paint my fears," she admitted, a touch of vulnerability threading her confidence. "When I put them on the canvas, it's like confronting the monsters hiding within." Julia felt a tug at her core, resonating with the artist's honesty. "I used to think confronting those fears made me weak," Julia said, surprising even herself with the admission. "But now, I wonder if perhaps facing them could actually release us from their grip." They stood in a momentary silence, a shared understanding bridging their disparate backgrounds. It was exhilarating. Julia saw herself reflected in the artist's struggle. She felt an urge to foster that connection, to validate their stories. As the evening wore on and she conversed with more artists, she began to grasp the nuances of their lives, the unpolished realities behind their creations. Each discussion became a window, offering views into raw and real vulnerabilities. The more she learned, the more she questioned her own past decisions, her once ambitious climb up the corporate ladder now feeling like a distant echo. In that vibrant space, Julia stumbled upon a thought. It wasn't merely about sharing resources. To be truly impactful, she would need to create a platform where these artists could tell their own stories in their own words, redefining the narrative of what success meant to them. But with every idea she conceived, the shadow of fear circled, whispering doubts she thought she had silenced. The evening culminated with a budding idea swirling in her mind. Could she co-create an exhibit highlighting artists' journeys through their struggles? As she stretched her imagination, a different fear surfaced. Would the business elite she once mingled with take her initiative seriously? Would they see her as abandoning the very ideals they celebrated? Leaving the gallery that night, Julia felt the weight of her questions growing more pronounced. Was she ready to risk risking her reputation for the sake of authenticity? As the brisk wind whipped through the streets, a resolve began to solidify within her. She wouldn't just cheer from the sidelines. The transition from a passive supporter to a proactive participant was imperative. If she wanted to help artists navigate their fears, she must first model that bravery herself. Turning onto a quieter street, she grasped her phone, fingers dancing over the screen as she searched for local artists on social media, excited by the thought of immediate action. But just then, an unsettling thought intruded. What if her past began to cloud this path? What if her ex-husband's judgments resurfaced, twisting her intentions and amplifying voice insecurities? The weight built within her, drawing a sharp line between hope and trepidation. She halted, staring up at the stars, their distant light a reminder that clarity often emerged after darkness. As she resumed her path, one question echoed within her mind, demanding confrontation. What hidden truths would she have to face from her past to honor this new commitment fully? Julia's fingers paused above the glowing screen, a wave of hesitation washing over her. Her excitement for the connection she envisioned clashed violently with the looming specter of her past. Each name she scrolled past felt like a reminder of the life she had shed, yet still, remnants lingered. The fear of judgment bubbled to the surface. She could almost hear Richard's chilling critique echoing in her ears. What would he think of her now, engaged in a pursuit that diverged so starkly from the corporate realm they had once navigated together? The shocking realization made her heart race. Did she need permission to be vulnerable? To explore who she was beyond the confines of their societal constructs? The inevitability of confronting her past gnawed at her. The awareness that some truths demanded to be unearthed before she could ever hope to redefine herself. She continued walking, the cold air sharpening her senses, mingled with the bittersweet taste of nostalgia. The weight of Richard's expectations had always felt suffocating, and now she grappled with the fear that his lingering influence could taint her newfound journey. It was unsettling, yet the urgency to break free from those chains propelled her forward. Deciding spontaneity was needed, she stepped into a nearby coffee shop. The rich aroma of roasted beans mingling with the warmth of the space acted as a balm. Julia tucked into a secluded corner, her laptop open. With every click, a new layer of her aspirations began to unfurl. As she drafted an initial outline for the exhibit, she envisioned the voices of the artists, their stories spilling onto the pages like vibrant paint on canvas. Still, the shadows loomed. Every now and then, her thoughts drifted back to Richard. The evenings filled with debates over which gallery to showcase were replaced by this newfound curiosity for art's raw narrative. How was it that she had allowed his perception of success to taint her journey? The thought stung, and with it surfaced an unsettling revelation. It wasn't just his fears she had internalized, but her own as well. The idea that she needed stable security had woven its way into her perception of success. Determined to strip away those layers, she pulled up her social media profiles, digging deep for local artistry, but also searching for artists who spoke about overcoming personal struggles. Perhaps, in sharing their narratives, she could confront her own. Each click brought her closer to individuals who not only created, but also navigated their own adversities, offering a lifeline to redefine success. Her phone buzzed, a message from an artist she had reached out to earlier. "I'd love to collaborate. Let's meet and share stories." A jolt of energy coursed through her. This was it, the moment she needed to ground her ambitions into something tangible. In that instant, the fear of judgment faded, and a spark ignited where doubt had resided. As she finalized her plans to meet the artist, a nostalgia swept over her, revealing that every risk was now a beacon of potential. She could no longer allow the echoes of her past to dictate her future. Julia settled into her decision with a renewed sense of determination. It was time to reshape her narrative, to not just be a passive observer in the artistry of life, but a co-creator of her authentic journey. Yet, a nagging curiosity crept in. Was there more to Richard's lingering shadow? If she succeeded in her endeavor, what would he do? Would he attempt to undermine her efforts? Or would this newfound direction compel him to confront his own insecurities? She closed her laptop, a smile playing on her lips. Julia recognized she was on the brink of something profound, ready to explore the depths of her truth and ambitions. Her heart raced with each decision she made moving forward, but the question remained. Would she find strength in the face of potential conflict? Or would Richard's voice weigh down her wings? Determined to reveal hidden skills and uncover her truth, she took a deep breath and prepared to meet the artist. But the deeper she plunged into this journey, the more she wondered what startling truths from her relationship would emerge, and how would they ultimately shape her future. As Julia sat at her cluttered table in the coffee shop, the anticipation of her upcoming meeting bubbled beneath her exterior, transforming into a flurry of thoughts that zipped through her mind like a chaotic whirlpool. She felt the familiar pull of anxiety clenching around her chest, but she knew she had come too far to turn back now. Swiftly, she opened a blank document on her laptop and began to jot down notes for her conversation with the artist. What was it she wanted from this collaboration? She sought authenticity, a space where vulnerability could blend with creativity. But could she truly express herself without the weight of Richard's judgment lingering in the air? Navigating her self-imposed barriers became more challenging with each keystroke. The cafe hummed around her while her mind drifted back to their last collaboration, her art swathed in his ideals. Richard had always been meticulous, demanding perfection which often left her exhausted and drained. Had she lost her voice then, or had she simply silenced it? Despite the shadows of their shared history, there flickered a determination to evolve, maybe even a rebellious streak against that voice echoing in her ear. She glanced at the clock, the hands creeping toward the arranged time. A sudden rush of doubt surged through her. What would she even say? Would the artist, Anna, turn out to be like Richard, a mere reflection of her previous experiences? Her heart raced at the thought of unearthing another vein of critical assessment, yet buried beneath the anxiety was a glimmer of hope for connection. Julia stood up, raked her fingers through her hair, and inhaled the rich scent of coffee. This was her moment. As she stepped outside, the air was vibrant with the sounds of the city, a stark contrast to the stillness of her self-doubt. Unable to shake off the confrontation with her own insecurities, she felt compelled to prepare herself, to confront whatever assumptions she could carry into this meeting. Arriving at the gallery where they agreed to meet, she stepped inside, her senses ignited by the blend of creativity and chaos. Art sprawled across the white walls, each piece a reflection of struggles akin to her own. Was she brave enough to step into these narratives, gather stories, and weave them into her own? Julia? The calling of her name pulled her from her thoughts. Anna stood nearby, vibrant with enthusiasm and grace. She embodied the creative spirit Julia yearned for. Engaging in conversation, Julia found herself sharing snippets of her past, glossing over the darker patches but revealing enough to see the hungry curiosity in Anna's eyes. They spoke of art, resilience, and their journeys in the pursuit of finding their narratives. In that moment, Julia's excitement transcended her trepidation, urging her to embrace the uncomfortable truth of the experience. As the day unfolded, they shared laughter and inspiration, pushing aside the boundaries Julia had reluctantly erected. With each exchange, Julia felt pieces of her self-doubt crack and fall away. Could this be the foundation of her new journey? An untainted partnership built on open exploration, rather than calculated expectation. But as they settled into a new rhythm of collaboration, Julia couldn't shake the unsettling intuition that Richard wasn't entirely behind her. She felt his eyes on her, not in the literal sense, but as a constant whisper of threat. Would this new venture elicit his disparagement or push him to redeem himself? She watched Anna write feverishly in her notebook, an echo of her own fervor for artistic truth illuminating the space around them. Yet, in that moment of burgeoning joy, the dark corners of Julia's psyche smiled back, relishing the uncertainty. Tomorrow would surely bring confrontation. She needed to reconcile her past, to prevent it from suffocating her future. Rising from her seat, a newfound clarity washed over her, a determination to not just confront Richard, but to redefine any shadow he cast over her life. The time had come for Julia to delve into deeper entanglements of her history, to understand how they shaped her present. This journey was evolving beyond what she had anticipated. She was not merely embarking on a new chapter, but diving headfirst into a labyrinth of revelations. As she left the gallery, a text popped up on her phone, an unexpected message from Richard. Curiosity morphed into anxiety. What was it he wanted now? Would he pull her back into the depths of their past, or compel her to rise stronger in her newfound strength? The crossroads lay ahead, and Julia found herself teetering on the edge of what would define her future. The phone buzzed insistently in her hand, pulling Julia from the tumult of her thoughts. Richard's name flickered on the screen, and her breath caught in her throat. As tempting as it was to ignore the message, she felt an urgent pull to confront whatever awaited her. It was time to carve out her own narrative, and this was a moment she couldn't allow to slip away. With a deep breath, she opened the text. "Can we talk? I need to explain." The simplicity of the words belied the years of entangled emotions they represented, and Julia could almost hear his voice, smooth and persuasive, like honey coating an unfamiliar pill. The urge to dismiss him flared strongly, but self-doubt soon crept back in. Was confronting him truly the right move? She absently walked back toward the street, her feet carrying her forward, as uncertainty clashed with determination. The glowing streetlights cast long shadows, mirroring the doubts that lingered. What if he twisted her words or belittled her aspirations? Yet, the prospect of being beholden to his past judgments ignited a resolve within her. She wouldn't let him have that power over her any longer. Arriving home, she set her purse down, the weight of it a reminder of the emotional toll she had been carrying. Biting her lip, she opened her laptop instead of facing Richard. Each click on her keyboard felt empowered, cathartic even. She drafted her thoughts about the collaboration with Anna, her excitement spilling onto the screen. This was her new chapter, a clear shift from the darkness of Richard's influence to the illuminating spark of possibility. But then came the tug. The thought of Richard's impending call loomed large, a storm cloud threatening to overshadow her newfound courage. How could she address her collaboration with Anna in a way that illustrated her independence? She could no longer be a reflection of his ambitions. She had work to do that was authentically her own. Hours faded as she wrestled with her conflicting desires. On one hand, the urgency to transform her past into something positive, and on the other, the need to shield herself from the echoes of Richard's criticisms. Finally, she reached for her phone, her thumb hovering over Richard's message. Embracing the discomfort, she typed back, "Okay, let's meet." Arranging to meet at a diner, neutral territory, Julia crafted her strategy. She would prepare herself to assert her boundaries, ensuring each word that flowed from her lips was steeped in conviction. She visualized a conversation where her past would not dictate her present, where Richard's expectations could no longer ghost her decisions. This was her moment to rewrite their story. The diner bore the familiar coolness of metallic surfaces and the aroma of fried food. As she arrived, Richard was already seated, his posture confident, yet shrouded in a meticulous facade. The air thickened with unsaid words and trembling emotions as Julia settled opposite him. Despite the familiar pang of anxiety, she steadied her resolve, reminding herself why she was here. Their conversation began with stilted pleasantries, but Julia quickly redirected it. "I need you to understand. I'm moving on. My collaboration with Anna is important to me, and I won't be sidelined by your judgments anymore." Each sentence felt like shedding an old skin, raw but liberating. Richard leaned forward, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "Julia, it's not about judgment. I want to support you." But the deeper layers of that claim were tinged with bitterness that she could sense clinging to his words. His rebuttal rose like a tide, threatening to engulf her in past insecurities. But Julia felt something shift within her. The battle was not only external, it was also within her to decide if she would draw strength from the echoes of their shared history, or allow it to drown her. As the conversation unfolded, she realized there was no map for this territory. Julia would have to navigate this treacherous ground guided by her newfound truth. Could she carve out the future she desired, while dispelling the shadows of their shared past? Her phone buzzed again with a notification, hinting at excitement from an unexpected email. Julia's heart quickened, anticipating new opportunities, new paths laden with creative freedom. But would this signify the birth of her authentic self, or merely lure her into the labyrinth of her old life? The tension in her stomach shifted, swirling with a cocktail of anxiety and exhilaration. Every moment with Richard reaffirmed her resolve to step away from the confines of his judgment. Julia felt the edge of her narrative starting to take shape. Who was that? Richard interrupted her thoughts, a flicker of jealousy shadowing his features. In that charged moment, Julia glimpsed her own strength in the face of opposition. It was time to dissect not only Richard's perception of her potential, but also her evolving identity against his influence. Would she find the clarity she sought, or would this confrontation lead her down a path marred with complicity and regret? The answers waited tantalizingly close, and Julia could almost taste the freedom that lay ahead. Julia drew in a breath, the air thick with the weight of Richard's question and the implications behind it. His eyes bore into her, demanding an explanation she wasn't ready to give, a judgment she was determined to defy. "Just work," she replied, her voice steady as she met his gaze. But inside, her heart raced, a constant reminder of the stakes involved. The email, likely an opportunity that could propel her forward, loomed in her mind like a lighthouse guiding her through foggy waters. "Work?" Richard smirked, his tone laced with skepticism. "You think you can just waltz in and claim your place after everything that's happened?" His words, heavy with condescension, threatened to unravel the fragile threads of empowerment she had worked so hard to weave. The anger flared within her, sparking an urge to retaliate, to confront him with the very truths he sought to dismiss. "I am claiming my place," Julia asserted, her voice firmer, embodying a newfound ferocity. "If you can choose to leave me behind, I can choose to leave the past behind." He leaned back slightly, reeling from her unexpected resolve. "You think cutting me off will solve your problems?" The nerve of his question triggered a flood of emotions. Did he realize that this was not just about denying him access? It was about asserting her own autonomy? "This isn't about cutting you off, Richard," Julia responded, choosing her words carefully. "It's about finding my own path, one that is not dictated by you or anyone else." Julia could feel her voice gaining strength, each sentence crafting a tapestry of her reclaimed identity. She would no longer allow his influence to shadow her ambitions. The realization that he might not wish her success brewed tension in the air, heavy and suffocating. But she refused to buckle. "I'm proud of what I'm building with Anna," she said, the confidence in her tone building. "It's creative, it's vibrant, and it's mine." Richard's expression shifted, the facade of nonchalance fading. "What exactly are you building, Julia?" His question felt like a challenge, a trap designed to undermine her progress. Instead of faltering, she stood tall, allowing the pride she felt for her idea to wash over her. "We're developing a platform to help emerging artists connect with mentors. It's something more than a project. It's a revolution," she declared. The belief in her mission altered the atmosphere around her, igniting a sense of empowerment and clarity she hadn't felt in years. He could mock her, undermine her, but she would not allow his perceptions to color her self-worth. Richard's eyes darkened with skepticism, and just as she anticipated another wave of criticism, something shifted. "And what makes you think you can succeed without my help?" He leaned forward, a blend of anger and desperation lacing his voice. "We could have been unstoppable, Julia." That desperation snapped something in her. His insistence that success was predicated on their partnership framed her ambitions as weak, as if she needed his validation to thrive. "I don't need you, Richard. I've never needed you. You were a part of my journey, but now I'm charting my own course," she said, voice unshaken. The words hung heavily in the air between them, an invisible barrier that fortified her newfound resolve. Beneath Richard's facade, she sensed his shock rippling, a crucial turning point that shattered her old perceptions of both herself and him. The moment stretched endlessly, as Julia felt the power of her assertion wash over her like an invigorating wave. Could she really walk away? Fully embrace the path ahead? Just when she thought the tides had turned, her phone buzzed with urgency again, drawing her attention away from Richard. Stress collided with anticipation. "Another message, Julia?" His question came soaked in annoyance, a reminder of their previous dynamic. "Yes," she shot back, a smirk dancing on her lips. "I don't recall asking for your input." She unlocked the notification, and her eyes widened in disbelief. Opportunities like these didn't just come around again. "Is it about your precious project? Surely you can't be serious." Richard scoffed. This time she held her ground, staring him down. "You have no idea what I'm serious about." Determination thrummed beneath her skin as she read the email, her heart tearing between excitement and apprehension. Was this the validation she so desperately sought? Or was it another weight she was unknowingly placing upon her shoulders? The world around them faded, and for the first time, she felt disassociated from Richard's influence. She could almost hear the whispers of artists waiting to claim their voices, echoing in her head, demanding her to join the struggle for authenticity. "Let's see what I can do without you," she whispered under her breath, feeling the weight of her words echo into the chasm of their shared past. As she shared the thrilling news with him, challenging him to understand her excitement, the shadows around her began to fade. Where would this newfound energy lead her? Would she rise to the occasion, or stumble beneath expectations once again? With a flicker of hope igniting her resolve, she realized this conversation had become a crucible for her identity, not just with Richard, but with herself. Was she ready to meet her future head-on, or would doubt once more anchor her down? The moment of clarity left her buoyant, but far from certain. Before she could ponder further, Richard leaned in with a warning tone. "You may think this is a game, Julia, but be careful. This path is fraught with challenges." Julia's heart raced, not from fear, but from the thrill of possibility. Could she, in fact, wield her own power and creative stories, unhindered? The foundation of her resolve trembled as she grasped its significance. The stakes had never been higher, and yet she stood on the precipice, eager for what lay ahead. Would this chance set her free, or would it ensnare her in the familiar chains of her past? With the taste of ambition fresh on her tongue, Julia braced herself for the confrontations ahead. Julia's finger hovered over the screen, the luminous hues of her phone reflecting the whirlpool of emotions surging within her. With a pang of urgency, she read through the email again, allowing the tantalizing words to sink deeper into her consciousness. Each sentence painted a vivid picture of potential, the kind she had only dared to envision in the quiet corners of her mind. But this opportunity was not just another stepping stone. It felt revolutionary. "I can't be held back now," she whispered, testing the strength of her own conviction against the doubts that plagued her. The stakes were high, but so was her sense of purpose. As she locked her phone with determination, a confidence surged, pushing her further away from Richard and firmly onto the path she was beginning to carve out for herself. "Looks like you're on the verge of a big decision." Richard's tone, laced with disdain, sliced through her bubble of excitement. But this time, his disapproving gaze didn't faze her. "Yes, I am," Julia replied, her voice steady and full of purpose. "And it doesn't involve you." The edges of his mouth twisted into a smirk, an attempt to undermine her newfound clarity. "Are you really willing to risk everything?" He leaned in, a calculated look in his eyes, a mix of challenge and unease. The irony was palpable. What had he ever risked, aside from his comfort? But she wouldn't engage him in a verbal spar this time. Instead, Julia turned her back on him, the gesture imbued with finality. With each step, she felt the weight of his lingering doubts dissolve behind her, replaced by an exhilarating rush. She had magic to create, stories to tell, ones that didn't need his validation. She headed home, immersing herself in the details of her vision, relishing the feeling of being unburdened by his presence. Confronted with the blank canvas of her workspace, Julia allowed the ideas to flow. She sketched notes for the platform she envisioned alongside Anna, a digital haven for artists seeking guidance and mentorship. This was not merely a project, but a lifeline for countless creative souls craving direction and connection. Wouldn't she have just loved to have something like that when she was starting out? But as she wrote, a gnawing fear crept in. What if she faltered? What if her ambition crumbled under the weight of expectation? In that moment of vulnerability, Julia wrestled with her praise-seeking traits. Had she truly left Richard behind, or was part of her still begging for his approval? Questions swirled, but she couldn't let them take root. "Focus, Julia," she admonished herself, shaking her head to dissipate the fears that threatened to creep back in. She couldn't afford distractions, not when she was so close. So she forged ahead, weaving her ideas into a tapestry of strategies and tasks, almost mechanically denying herself the freedom to dwell on negativity. The foundation of her business began to take shape, each detail deliberately crafted. But her accelerated pace posed a risk. Was she truly prepared for the responsibility that awaited? The unsettling prospect of managing something larger than herself stirred a deep-seated, if unacknowledged, anxiety. What if she failed? A sudden jab at her heart pulled her to the present, a reminder of Richard's voice, the one that whispered doubts into her ear. "You've never managed anything outside of us before." She refused to let that shadow creep back, pulling her deeper into the darkness. She set her laptop aside for a moment, grounding herself in the truth she was attempting to construct, a truth dictated solely by her own aspirations, not the fractured connection she once had with Richard. Her vision was uniquely hers. She took a deep breath, the kind that signified new beginnings. Determined, she leaned forward and sent a reply to the email, enveloping it with the fervor of her renewed sense of agency. "I'm in!" The words sent a thrill racing through her veins, the promise of something new, large enough to dwarf the remnants of her past. Just as she hit send, her phone buzzed again. Not a pulse of excitement, but a harbinger of something different, an unknown that sent a shiver down her spine. It was from Anna. "Hey, we need to talk. I found something about Richard." Julia's heart stalled briefly, dark tendrils of curiosity wrapping around her. What could potentially shift the trajectory of everything she had just begun to build? The excitement of her opportunity mingled with the trepidation of what this could mean for her. Could the layers of her past resentfully crawl back? Or would this news be what finally severed the ties that she had fought so valiantly to dismantle? The breath caught in her throat as a cocktail of anxiety and anticipation swirled within her. This journey was just unfolding, but she was teetering on a precipice, ready to decide what lay ahead. Julia sat wide-eyed, her heart pounding in her chest. The message from Anna sent ripples of anxiety coursing through her veins. What could her former partner have done now to affect her budding project with Anna? Could he have sabotaged her efforts from behind the scenes, or had he done something worse altogether? No, she thought, shaking her head to dispel the paralyzing what-if scenarios that raced through her mind. She had come too far to let Richard's shadow dictate her reality. Whatever Anna had discovered, she was prepared to confront it. It was time for her to face the entirety of her past, every tangled thread, and forge a new future. Memories unfolded like warnings in her mind. Richard's smug disdain, the soft toxicity that pervaded their earlier collaborations, the fear that had kept her muted. With renewed determination, she reached for her phone, typing out a quick response. "I'll meet you. When and where?" She felt an electric undercurrent of anticipation at the thought of uncovering more truths, those thin-walled fears fading into the urgent need for clarity. "Tomorrow at noon, the gallery," Anna replied almost instantaneously. Rising from her seat, she felt the atmosphere shift, a world of possibilities colliding with remnants of her insecurities. The gallery, where she envisioned a vibrant future, would become the backdrop for what could also be a harbinger of her past misdeeds. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting deep shadows on the street outside, Julia prepped her gear for the meeting with Anna. Though anxiety simmered below the surface, it was interwoven with a sense of empowerment, an exhilarating mix that propelled her forward. She meticulously compiled notes for their conversation, reminding herself of the ultimate purpose, not just to create a platform for struggling artists, but to reclaim her own voice in a space filled with creativity and freedom. Morning arrived like a bright promise, the air crisp and invigorating as she made her way to the gallery. Each step felt lighter, unshackling her from the chains that once tethered her to self-doubt. Arriving early, she couldn't help but admire the pieces on display, each brushstroke and hue a lesson in vulnerability, mirroring her own journey. When Anna arrived, her presence was a burst of energy, and Julia felt the tension ease a bit. They exchanged pleasantries, but Julia's mind raced, urging to unveil Anna's findings. "Let's sit," Anna suggested, guiding her to a quiet corner of the expansive gallery, soft light spilling over them from strategically placed windows. "What did you discover?" Julia asked, the weight of the moment hovering heavily between them. Anna's expression turned serious. "I've done some digging into that trust fund, and it seems Richard has become involved behind the scenes. He's planning to create a competing platform for artists." Shock washed over Julia, merging with the resolve she had cultivated over the past weeks. "Is it his way of undermining my project? He knows I'm trying to create something meaningful, and this feels like sabotage." Anna nodded, her brow creased with concern. "It's definitely concerning, but we can use this. If he tries to undercut your vision, we'll expose what he's doing for what it is, self-serving, not community-driven." Julia felt the fire within her blaze brighter. This was the moment she needed to fortify her resolve, to take action rather than remain passive. "You're right. I won't let him dictate this narrative. My vision will stand on its own merit, fueled by my passion and genuine connections." A wave of confidence swelled within her. We need to gather support from artists who embrace their own truths and rally behind the genuine artistry of local talent. If we can create a platform built on authenticity, it will easily outshine whatever he's trying to do. "So how do we proceed?" Anna asked, her eyes alight with enthusiasm, reflecting Julia's newfound zeal. "We start with our network." Julia felt the excitement bubble forth. "Let's reach out to local artists and gather testimonials about their experiences, the struggles they've faced. We'll create a movement around authenticity. Use social media to amplify their voices and highlight their journeys." The path ahead transformed into a tapestry of ideas and strategies, woven from the fabric of her past and her partner's treachery. This was no longer just a mere project. It was a testament to everything she had endured and overcome. As they plotted the next steps of their collaboration, Julia could feel the foundation she was building solidify beneath her. She was not just articulating her vision, but manifesting it, a dance of purpose and creativity, intertwining with courage and resilience. "What about Richard, though?" Anna's voice rang out, her caution breaking Julia's focus. "Don't you think he'll retaliate?" Julia paused, her mind wading into the depths of her insecurities before emerging renewed. "Let him try. I'm done with allowing his actions to impact my narrative. This project is about lifting up others who reflect the strength I'm growing into, and no one can take that away from me. Not him, not anyone." As they forged forward with their plans, threading a myriad of voices into their project, Julia felt an overwhelming sense of liberation. She had broken free from the constraints that once defined her. This was her time, her opportunity to write the next chapter of her life, one that reveled in authenticity, creativity, and empowerment. When the day of the unveiling approached, Julia felt electrified, embraced by a community of artists whose stories she had helped elevate. They were preparing to showcase narratives filled with triumph, vulnerability, and passion. As she stood in front of the gallery on opening night, Julia gazed around at the mosaic of diverse expressions, her heart swelling with pride. This was not merely an event, but a collective awakening. "Ready?" Anna asked, standing beside her, beaming with excitement. "Ready," Julia replied, invigorated by the resolve she had fought so hard to build. Together, they stepped inside the gallery, the warmth of shared ambitions enveloping them as the voices of artists echoed in the air. The layers of her past slipped away, replaced by a vibrant breakthrough. Julia was finally where she was meant to be, free, unencumbered, a force of creativity surrounded by the vibrant stories they'd uplifted. This was her achievement. Not only had she redefined her life's narrative, but she had also conquered the ghosts of her past, once and for all. The journey had drawn her forward, imbued her with courage, and ignited a relentless passion within. Julia had become not just the architect of her success, but the embodiment of creativity, resilience, and authenticity. As she stepped forward to address the gathering crowd, ready to share her journey and the stories of those she had connected with, Julia knew one thing for certain. She was no longer just a reflection of who she was. She had become a beacon of who she aspired to be, and her story was just beginning. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, and this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.